Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Discovering Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Scandariato with Red Knight Properties. And today we have a special guest here with us, AJ Shepard, coming at us from Oregon. And AJ is a licensed property manager and licensed contractor. He's got a vast experience in commercial real estate, which is, for over 10 years ago in contracting. And he has, really helped build, he really has built his property management arm of his company. He has a syndication arm as well. But what we're going to talk about today is streamlining property management. And that's, subject on a lot of operators and investors' minds as well. Is, when you acquire the property, you have to make a decision. You either manage it yourself or you do third party management. And AJ's here to talk about some of the ways he was able to do it himself with his company and some of the processes that he put in place to facilitate his growth. So very excited to have him on the show.
Yeah, Anthony, thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it. So happy to get started wherever you want.
Great. So want to talk about the property management arm. So how are you? I mean, it's a bitch to manage buildings. It depends upon how many units you have, but it's very time consuming, I would say, process, and it takes up a lot of time, even sometimes more than the investing side, syndication. So how are you juggling everything?
Well, we manage quite a few properties, not only ones that we own or syndicated, but also for third parties. So we've been doing this a long time. My brother and I started out buying single family homes in like 2007, 2008, kind of right as the turn of the downturn. And we got to a point where we're like, man, we are doing this for ourselves. We might as well open up a business and do it for other people. So it's like kind of 2011 where we started managing for other people. And, a lot of it is communication. That is really like what property management is about. It's, communicating and putting that down on paper and making sure that all parties agree, kind of like any sort of contract, and making sure that, each party kind of follows that contract. From a landlord standpoint, you got to keep the property up. From a tenant standpoint, you got to pay rent. It's pretty simple process, but it does take a lot of work, and you got to be very diligent about it. So that means keeping good records. That means we're, keeping each party up to date, let them know what's going on, and that sort of thing. So one of the things that really has helped our company out is really documenting sort of these processes. And once we have documented a majority of the process, the workflow, everything that goes along with that, it's when you can start hiring employees to start performing that work for us. So we really kind of like really started ramping up in 2014, 2015. And it was right around that time where we were introduced to the idea of hiring remotely. So we kind of got into this spot where we had an assistant of ours that was in person, and she was like, I'm giving you guys my 2 weeks. And my brother and I were off at a conference and got introduced to this idea of having people work for us, but away. And we really just kind of brainstormed as like, what can they do? And like we started listing off the things that you can do behind a computer, especially with the technology these days. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, for instance, like right now, we're across the country and we're chatting with each other, right? From person to person. So kind of our story goes is, we hired two for the price of one, maybe even two for 2/3 the price of one, and taught them how to do that job and more. And their capacity was probably more than what our in-person could do. So from that point, it was really developing checklists, developing procedures, making sure that, as we grow, that, we've kind of got these positions identified on where they can move into. So fast forward to today, I think we have over 12 people working for us in the offsite professionals is what we call them. And they do a majority of the work. Most of the work that is done here in the U.S. is what needs to be done physically. That's our maintenance workers out there. It's the leasing agents putting boxes on, and then kind of like our operations. So, but most of the stuff, like you start thinking about like answering phones, talking to tenants, talking to clients, searching for properties, doing rental comparisons. We're able to teach them about our actual local market and educate them, which we have a procedure for. And then, they become a very valuable asset to our company. We've brought them into our culture. We have like a meeting every week where everyone's on Zoom or whatever video conferencing that you do. And I can call them up right now, or even just text them and be like, "Hey, I need you to do this for me, or do that." And it's pretty incredible the amount of work that they can actually get done in a very professional manner.
It's incredible. So let's take a step back. So you started out. No, it's great. So similar to us, we manage our own properties as well. We started out managing our own. We don't do any third party at this point, but we're still continuing to manage our own, and we're trying to do the same thing in terms of making sure that the processes are in place. And now we're hiring more assistants, etc. So the challenge for us is obviously finding good people. You're finding people in different countries. So how are you able to deal with any communication? You mentioned communication, any potential language barriers or just general communication. Obviously you have a process for weekly meetings. We do the same thing with our remote teams, etc. But and then also, how are you finding your talent and hiring and vetting? And do you have a lot of turnover? Just a lot of questions regarding human resources come to mind. So very curious to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure. So typically most of ours come from well English spoken countries. The Philippines is one of them. They have what's called a BPO industry, and forgive me, but I forget what that acronym is, but I just know that there is a bunch of call centers that support the financial services. And so they get their training through that sort of like customer service department. And then kind of like as they make their way up the ranks, they can then start applying, their English gets better, they improve their skills, and then they're able to kind of leave that industry and come into the work from home scenario. And that's kind of where we pick them up and then sort of like keep them. And they're usually very, very loyal. Turnover, they're super loyal. So most of the time they stick with us. We're a smaller company on the grand scheme of things. Like once you've worked for, like one of those JP Morgan or Chase or Wells Fargo type of industries where you're really just a number, like you come and work and you get to talk. I mean, I talk directly with them and have video conferences with them. They get to see the value of being able to talk to the owner and be a part of a growing family culture type company. And they really appreciate that. So turnover's super low. We use Offsite professionals as a company, and they help us find them. They do a lot of the screening. They make sure that we interview the right type of clients or the right type of person for the right type of position, I guess is what I want to say. Sorry about that. So, but overall it's real good. We have used a lot of technology. Like I said, the video conferencing has been like the huge game changer. Using voice over IP, that whole system has to get set up. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Nice. Okay, so you're basically running a company and no one's working for you in your office. You just have people all over the place, which is good. That's how we try to do it as well.
I mean, the pandemic has had a lot of people start to work from home, and they're realizing that like the job, at least in the real estate world, like you're out there looking at physical buildings, and you have to be in town to do that, identify like the scope of work and everything that needs to happen, and you got to have someone get out there and do it. But the rest of the work that's behind a computer, as you scale to larger and larger things, each position becomes more repeatable. I mean, essentially, one function of the job is there's so much of it it's being performed by one person. And that's one of the real big benefits of going to multifamily and getting into these bigger projects is the scalability of it. Is that you're not customizing like with a single family home. You've got to do the whole gamut of everything. Whereas if you've got 200 units, then there's one person that does kind of the maintenance, and then one person that does the leasing, and you can really focus in on those jobs and make sure that they're done well and done professionally.
Excellent. So how did you start? Who was your first hire? And then kind of walk me through, you hire the first person, what did they do? Who was the second person? What did they, forget about the maintenance and leasing on site. I'm talking about from your corporate level.
Sure. So we hired two the first go around that I kind of mentioned, and one was like a customer service person that answered the phones, dealt with tenant issues, dealt with tenant concerns, kind of how to do work orders. Like sometimes when you're bringing on new properties, like the tenants have tons and tons of questions. So this person was on the phone most of the time, just answering questions, dealing with all that. The other person we put on accounting. So every time, I mean, I don't know about your business, but when we buy a property, we typically take the utilities and then bill them back to the tenants. So we call that implementing RUBS. That's the ratio utility billing system. And so this person was taking all the accounts receivable and accounts payable and inputting that into the accounting system, and then making sure everything got paid. So those are, when you're only doing a few hundred units, like those are kind of like two jobs. Ultimately now I've got one person that just does accounts receivable, one person that does accounts payable, and then one person that does like all the maintenance stuff, just because there's so many properties. So that like that one job really kind of turned into three jobs as our company has grown. And likewise on the customer service team. We now have someone that does just strictly lease renewals. We have someone that does strictly writing leases. Another one that does some screening activities, making sure that all the tenants have all their stuff in correctly. Another one answering phones. So that's kind of like the progression of as we grow. My brother and I are principals of the company. We each have our own assistants, and they just work on special projects. If we need to work on the company, we're able to delegate some special projects to them that they can just do the paperwork on. And yeah. So
okay.
Does that kind of answer your question? I know it's probably a lot of info,
no,
especially
great
for people that don't know property management.
So your first hire was how many units, and now you're at your 12th hire, how many units? So kind of like.
So our first hire was probably at 170 units or so, and we're now up to 750 units.
Okay. All right.
So we had like a leasing agent, a maintenance person, and then we hired two offsite professionals at like that kind of like 150 to 200 level, and then we've just crested 750 not too long ago. So.
Okay, great. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
So let's take a step back a little bit. On the accounting side, you have basically three people. Are these all in, you mentioned the Philippines, are these all in the Philippines, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so that basically answered my own question. I was going to ask, why not almost third party the bookkeeping?
Yeah. We have a couple CPAs that do the like tax accounting here in the US, just because they have to file the taxes for us. But all the bookkeeping, we have one person in the Philippines that is a CPA in the Philippines, but works for significantly less and manages actually all of our other people doing the accounts and bookkeeping. We run several companies too, so we're in and out of multiple different accounting softwares, and she kind of manages all of that. One little tidbit for anyone that's like using QuickBooks, the QuickBooks desktop version is significantly cheaper. And if you put it on an application server, you can run multiple companies off of it. So we're able to have our people in the Philippines log in, and then I can log in on a different username, and we can actually both be working on the same company file at the same time, which is pretty slick.
That's excellent. So what property management software do you recommend?
There's a lot of them out there, and there's some new ones coming up. We currently use Appfolio, and we use Appfolio Investment Manager that syncs with our property management software for syndication, which is pretty cool. So I'd have to kind of give a recommendation to them. They're also a publicly traded company and have come strides in, they're always kind of at the forefront. We started out with Excel. Like, when you're keeping track of rents and keep track of everything, like, sometimes like the down and dirty is where you need to start. But after that, we went to Buildium, and then Buildium to Appfolio. After we took that jump to Appfolio, it's kind of hard to fathom going anywhere else. Like, once you choose one, you're kind of like in the trenches with it. But there's, I think, Rentvine and Rent Manager are a couple new ones that have come out that use like HubSpot, which is like some automation software. We actually do have implemented some automation software that keeps like track of our processes, which is called Lead Simple. It's usually specific to property management, but they've been good in improving their services, so that's been pretty fun. We implemented that in like the last 6 months, but it's been good.
Excellent. So you see yourself spending more time on your property management business. Obviously, you're involved in other businesses too. But for the real estate, the syndication side, investment side, or the management, like what do you spend most of your time on, and what's giving you the most, I guess, return on your money from a time standpoint? Obviously, you probably have these companies for different reasons, but I'm just curious to hear that.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. From my personal standpoint, probably spending time on the syndication side is the best use of time. Now, is that the most gratifying? I don't know. We implemented a program we run a real estate brokerage too. And, we started out in single family, duplexes, fourplexes, stuff like that. And we've recently started partnering with our brokers and even with one of our maintenance guys on houses. And like we bought a fourplex for, I don't know, 620,000 with our maintenance person. And I meet with him like every 2 weeks, like one-on-one. And 2 of the units went vacant like a month ago, and he's got them completely turned over and done like in the next week, and just killing it, and absolutely excited to be, an owner in the property. It's amazing how much better things happen when you're personally vested in it. And he's just been looking to us for kind of like the coaching aspect, and we've been able to partner with him on that actual property, and it's gone swimmingly well. We did the comps on it today, and it looks like it's going to appraise out at like maybe $1.1 million, $1.2 million with the rents on it. So we'll go through and refinance it, pull out the money, and probably go try and do it again on something.
Excellent. It's the name of the game.
Yeah.
That's great. How can people find you, AJ? Learn more about you, learn more about your company, and reach out to you.
Sure. Uptown Syndication is our syndication website. So we're always looking for new people to partner with. We do property management. We usually buy in Oregon, Portland area. And Uptown Properties is the name of our kind of real estate brokerage and property management company. And those are probably, we also do a podcast. It's called Westside Investors Network, WIN. And we actually have live events here in Oregon too. So if you're ever in the area, come on down. It's the third Thursday of the month, and we do podcasts. We release them like once a week, and that's just westsideinvestorsnetwork.com.
Excellent. And we'll have a link to the podcast and the website and everything that AJ just said in our social media on the description. And if you also liked what you heard and or saw today, if you could please give us a rating and review on iTunes so AJ and I can get our message out to a larger audience. We really appreciate that. And thanks so much for coming on, AJ. I hope to talk to you again when you have double the unit count and 24 employees now instead of 12. And very, very curious to hear about your growth. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.